Hello and welcome everybody back to episode 7 of the Casual Spikes podcast. And I don't have the title up on the screen, so how are people going to know it's the Casual Spikes, Randy? How are they going to know?
Well, the three people that watch us will probably be very entertained and already know what they're watching.
And we can't even say that anymore, Randy. Like the last few episodes have been like absolutely kind of crushing, honestly. All things
Oh, what?
considered. Yeah.
That's surprising.
I mean, we've gotten like more views on like the previous 3 episodes than we had on like the first like 3 or 4 episodes, so people keep watching.
Well, that's good.
That's
We'll
good.
keep putting out. We'll keep putting out
Future
semi, semi decent content.
Future T-shirt. Well, that's good.
I mean, that's like 90% of my Magic games. I just like think I have a game plan, and my opponent just goes, "What if I just had all these?" I'm like, well, that's not good.
I know. I
And
play Magic and I go in. I'm like I've played out every like possible scenario that I could play facing this deck with everything else in the format, and then as soon as my opponent goes land go, I go Ooga Booga mode, and I just all training goes out the window. We just take game actions.
I mean, that's all you gotta do, right? You just take game actions. Magic's just about whoever takes the most game actions, right? That's why Asmo food decks are the number one deck in Modern.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you finally understand. But while we're not talking about food or Asmo or whatever and bonus points if you can cast it, well, you can definitely do that. But if you can say the full name without having to take a breath, we are doing something special today. It's something that only comes around once every month with how often Magic product gets released. We're going to be looking at some spoilers from the Outlaws of Thunder Junction, the next standard legal set that is going to be coming to Magic, and I have some sweet visuals, as in you can actually see the cards while we're talking to them about them. I only
I just,
only
want,
in therapy do I talk to the cards.
I just want to clarify something. It's once every like month and a half a new set comes out. It's not every month.
Excuse me. Every 6 weeks we get spoilers for a new set. And honestly, overall thoughts and opinions on it, before we kind of get into some of our picks for, the most playable or we think could potentially see play in the format. I think overall, like flavor wise, like the powerful like feeling or whatever, like just kind of like the synergies and things like that of the set top to bottom, I'm actually kind of in love with the set.
Yeah, I will say I actually like the set. It uh I guess it brings back feelings of when we went to Innistrad for the first time for me, where like there's kind of a whole bunch of like new different things. It feels like there's a bunch of different like mini archetypes kind of popping up. There's just a bunch of just like interesting cards. Like I think Standard's going to be really interesting moving forward. I won't know because I'm not going to play it ever, but I'm going to hear things from like the two people I know that play Standard going, "Man, you should really play Standard. It's great." I'm like, I bet it is.
Hey, the
And
Mana
anyway,
Trader
I lost
series
a
is going to be
Phoenix on
standard.
turn three when they flipped over three Phoenixes.
Hey, we got Mana Trader series like playing standard in April, so you just have to play it for at least one more month.
Yeah, but I have terrible luck with Magic Online and Standard.
Hey, join the club. Magic Online does not like me. Period.
Yeah, I learned I just can't play Standard because I ran three or four different leagues during this last RTQ season, and I think I managed to two three was the best I ever did in any of those leagues.
Oof.
Yeah, and I was playing like real decks too. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna build green white humans. Like, nope, nope, we're playing real decks that just apparently get stomped on. I was just able to queue up into my worst matchup every time.
Even played 2 matches. Like, you know what? I'm gonna give it a break. I'm gonna come back tomorrow and cute into another bad matchup.
Yeah, this was not. We lost a lot of play points for Standard.
Well, at least with Mana Trader stuff, it is not, or it's free, basically,
Yeah, there's no play
basically
points
free.
involved. Yeah,
Yeah, and there's some pretty good players that play in there as well.
I know that's why I can't win.
Hey, I only got like absolutely destroyed by Claudio in like Pioneer, and then I had to play against Will Kruger in Legacy. So, and you know what? Surprisingly, like one of those matches actually went like fairly well, and the other one I just got stomped.
Terrible.
I'm just saying. I count it as a win beating Will Kruger in Legacy, even if I was playing like a kind of busted archetype.
Oh
Pretty
man,
good.
Hand-Meter is a fair and balanced card.
True. Have you ever thought about turn one double thought seizing your opponent through both of their Force of Wills and then bringing back an Atraxa? Like, that's a pretty good game plan. I don't know why more people aren't doing that.
Disgusting.
Stupid. But, we're not talking about, well, most of those formats.
Yeah,
uh,
that's more really.
so, for maybe some of the new people that are seeing something like this for the first time, hello, how are you? I hope you're having a great and wonderful day. But we normally cover like Modern and Pioneer on like this show because that is the formats that we mainly play. And a lot of when we talk about these cards that we're going to show off and cards that we really like from the set, we're going to be kind of referencing Modern and Pioneer uh, as like the main things to keep an eye out for, and when talking about cards that we think are going to synergize well and so on with these cards here. So just to keep that in mind, if you hear us talking about, something and you're like, hey, I don't think that was printed in a standard set. Well, it's mainly because we're not going to be talking about standard. Like maybe we'll reference it, but it's not going to be a main component of like our kind of like argument or why we think it's going to be a good card.
Yeah, I will say that 90% of what I'm talking about will be for Pioneer, mainly just because we have the Pioneer RCQ season coming up here in like 2 weeks by the time this comes out. So,
Yeah.
like, most of what I'm looking at is for Pioneer. I'm still hunting for that magical deck that can this dumpster on Rakdos Vampires. I don't think that deck exists, but we're gonna waste a lot of play points and tickets pretending that we can find it.
And one day we shall. We're going to find the
Yeah,
old city.
well, yeah. Once they just print something that's broken that's not in black or red.
Protection from vampires and from phoenixes is a very weird type line, or ability to have printed on a card, but it's necessary.
Yeah. Also, if I could just have my opponent can't win the game, indestructible hexproof creature, that'd be great.
Hey, I think Platinum Angel is legal.
It is not indestructible.
Yeah, you can give it indestructible. You got to work for it a little bit if you want that.
No, I need 0 mana. Can't be played in black or red decks. My opponent can't win the game. Hexproof indestructible creature.
Uh, I think Fire Design is pretty crazy, but I don't know if it's that crazy.
We'll get there.
25 years from now, we're at the 55th anniversary of Magic, and we have broke it. Ragavan is finally obsolete. 35 years later, Ragavan's no longer playable.
Weirdly enough, Deathray Shaman's still considered best one drop creature.
Still too good for Modern.
Still too good for modern, still too good for legacy. But okay in Pioneer.
Just an alright card. And you know what? We were talking about it before, but I think a little bit better. Just maybe a smidgen better because of like committing crimes and everything like that.
Yeah, I still don't think it's gonna be good, but I think
Yeah.
it might be playable. But the biggest problem is you don't have fetch lands to make it
Yeah.
an actual mana dork.
Yeah. We're not calling it like busted or anything, but I think definitely just ends up getting just that much better,
Yeah.
especially now knowing that Deathrite Shaman has been committing those crimes for over a decade now.
Yeah. Why he's been so powerful, he's just always committing crimes.
That's why he had to get thrown in jail. Like the messed up thing is like we don't know how long he's going to be in jail. We're going to be wearing
Oh,
free Deathrite Shaman shirts, and it's just going to be like a wanted poster with him behind bars, which
I
makes no sense,
no,
but
no. I do
yes,
not want Deathray Shaman unbanned in modern.
free the
Well,
homie.
Actually, you know what? I'm okay with Death Ray Summon being unbanned in Modern because my Rhinos are dead now, so I need a new deck.
Well, and like if we got to have Golgari Grave Troll for like 10 seconds in Modern that one time, like why can't we have Deathrite Shaman for like 2 weeks?
Because everyone knows it is broken.
Well, and everyone was like fine with Golgari Grave Troll. Like, hey, that's a good unban. And then like 2 weeks
To be
after, it's
fair,
like,
yeah, Golgari Gridpool was a great unban, and then like, what if we printed good support cards for Dredge? And it's
what?
like, why did you do this?
Oh man, that was awesome. That was a good time. Were you having fun? I was having fun.
I was not. I don't remember what I was even playing back then, so that's tell you.
I could tell you what I was playing because I've only ever played like two modern decks on my whole like time playing modern.
And weren't you just playing Death Shadow?
Exactly.
Have you only played Death Shadow and now Yawgmoth?
Yeah, like in a
Like
like
seriously
dedicated,
competitive? Yeah.
yeah, yeah, like an actual like I dedicated like multiple tournaments, like time, effort, whatever. Definitely those, because I mean I've played like ad nauseum at like a Grand Prix like years ago. I played like Amulet Titan in like a tournament. I think those are probably the only modern decks I've like registered for a tournament. But as far as like multiple tournaments over like the span of like months or years in this case, it's been Deathrite Shaman and Yawgmoth, or Death Shadow and Yawgmoth.
Yeah, I got you. I have registered Glistener Elf and Delver of Secrets way more than anyone should have in Modern.
Hey, there was a brief period where like that was correct.
Yeah, I wasn't playing when it was correct. So I wasn't playing when Delve cards were broken and uh Delver was playable, and I did play when Delver was playable in Death Shadow. And Heliod was the other best deck in the format. So I did play that, but I also registered Delver many, many, many times before that in like multiple like I'm going to win real money if I win this tournaments.
Hey, I can say that like uh I did cash a modern tournament with Delver Secrets in my deck, and that's in like post 2013. So like it's got to be an accomplishment.
Okay, let's talk about
All right,
the
all right,
cards
all right,
we
all
actually
right.
think are playable and stop reminiscing about when Modern was playable.
Make modern great again, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so in spectacular fashion, I brought up Oko the Ringleader, a card that we had mentioned before, I believe, in previous episodes, and now coming to you in probably like 480p. So,
Yep. Oh god.
so Oko the Ringleader is two generic, a green and a blue, for a 3 loyalty Planeswalker that has a static ability that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, Oko the Ringleader becomes a copy of up to one target creature you control until end of turn, except he has hexproof. A +1 that draws 2 cards, and if you committed a crime, you discard 1 card, and if you haven't committed a crime, you discard 2 cards. A -1 that creates a 3/3 green elk creature token, and then a -5 for each other non-land permanent you control. You create a token that is a copy of that permanent. Randy, give me your thoughts.
So I like this card a lot. I don't know if it's honestly playable, but I think it's playable, and I kind of want to put it in either like a Sultai shell or a bug shell, or possibly like a rug shell. Um, and I feel like it could be good in that like scenario. Um, Especially with it just being able to filter through your deck by you just drawing two, discarding two is good. Like it filters through your deck. We have the -1 to protect a creature, and then its ultimate probably just wins the game. Like I'm gonna have a board state. I'm gonna have a bigger board state now,
Yeah.
and notably it says permanent you control, so it's not just creatures. So you could like I don't think this is a real deck. Like you could make like a Super Friends deck, playing like 3 or 4 or 5 different planeswalkers and like, oh cool, I'm gonna copy like my planeswalkers. I'm gonna copy like all my artifacts. I'm gonna copy like whatever. So like notably, like you could play. you're not just copying your creatures. But I think just the +1 being able to filter through is good, and perhaps there is some kind of almost like reanimator type shell we could do in like a rug format with or an Sultai shell with it.
Yeah, I think pairing this up with like some of the powerful black cards, like in the Pioneer format, and I mean, I
Hmm.
guess to an extent modern, but Oko's probably gonna find a home in Pioneer somewhere.
Yeah, if he sees play outside of standard, it's going to be Pioneer. I think he's way. So, like, the bar for Planeswalkers in Modern is very high, and Oko doesn't come close, I don't think.
Yeah, I honestly I can't even think of like really off the top of my head, like aside from like Grist, a planeswalker that sees, pretty consistent play. And I mean, Grist really only sees play in like one archetype in the modern format.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you want to talk about Planeswalkers that see play, like, we have Gris, we have Ren and Six that still sees play, and that's about it.
And I don't even know if like Ren is like necessarily played in like any of like the top, at least not in the top five, like most played decks.
No, so Ren mostly sees play in, excuse me, like Omnath soup decks, depending on the variant, because I know there's like some only 3 drops and up variants right now that are running around that are doing semi decently, and in Jun Saga.
Yeah.
Like those are the 2 decks I know for sure you will see, like you have a high chance to see Ren. Outside of that, though, no one's really playing Ren, and Gris sees play only because Gris is a creature
Yeah.
technically in every other aspect.
Yeah. Like it's abused with like all the other like creature, like tutor stuff that like Yawgmoth plays.
Yeah,
And it
and
only, yeah.
it's just good. Like, but yeah, Oko does not meet that bar, or Oko the ringleader, I should say, does not meet that bar of being playable in Modern.
Mm.
But I do think that he'll see play in Pioneer, or I'm going to jam a lot of games with him in my deck, silently cursing myself for having him in my hand.
Hey, definitely, at least if you can build your deck around like playing, like using your graveyard as like another resource as well, which, with every set that comes out, the graveyard becomes more of a tool than, previous sets and like previous years and everything. And, Oko, like draw two, discard two, is going to be pretty good in just helping you leverage like the graveyard, either by casting like some of the powerful delve spells that still exist in the Pioneer format, or just getting to bring back creatures, getting to cast spells from the graveyard directly, again using it to pay cost, etc. It's going to be pretty good.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I could definitely see, like I said, this being like a Sultai or Bug Shell, where you have some number of dig through times. That card's still legal in Pioneer, in case anybody forgot, because it sees 0 play right now. So like
True.
either dig through time or the was it cut down, or that's not cut down.
Oh,
The delve one for
the
one
delve
black.
removal spell,
Yeah, I can't think of that one.
murderous cut.
Murder's cut. That's what it was. I knew it was cut. I was like, it's cut something, but it's not cut down.
Oh gosh.
But but yeah, I think Oko could find a home in Pioneer, possibly.
Yeah. The only well, I guess his +1 is like the only one that really cares about like committing crimes and stuff, but the fact that he does not directly commit crimes himself is kind of funny.
Well, yeah, well he's a ringleader. You don't commit crimes as a ringleader. You tell your underlings to do it.
I guess that's pretty flavorful, and he's wearing a cowboy hat.
Boom. We got the flavor context.
Yeah, he's wearing a hat. That's all he needed. We took all the characters to just put a cowboy hat on them, and they became outlaws.
More geniuses. We done it.
Even better is the fact that like I don't know if it's like a flavor fail or not for like Oko to like be able to copy like you know, the other creatures, or the other characters in like the posse. But
Mhm.
I guess I'm here for it. Whatever.
Yeah, I like him. I think, like I said, I'm gonna spend a lot of play points and tickets trying to make him playable.
Yeah, and he very well could be. I mean, obviously everything is to be determined, But I think
Yeah.
he just from this like in a vacuum, like he's a pretty good planeswalker, and you know things only get more busted as we print more sets, so he should at least be decent, somewhere.
Yeah, like I said, I like him. I like what he does. I'm here for it. I'm interested to see what I can do or what someone else will do who's smarter than me and makes him playable.
Amen. All right, Oko, I'm tired of looking at you. Let's get out of here. The next one, we have Jace Reawakened.
Yes.
Randy, I heard the people like Jace,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
and we want people to like Ashiok too, so we just merged them together.
yeah. I mean, so when Jace was killed off in 2 sets ago, for what are we
Yeah,
at?
March of the
March of the
Machines.
Machines. Um, I remember. So not to get too deep into lore that people don't actually care about. I remember people like, "Oh, Jace is dead. They're finally going to be moving on from him." I was like, "Give it like 2 to 3 sets. He'll be back." And
Here he
here we
is.
are,
Cue the
back
Stone Cold
again.
Steve Austin music. It's
but
Jace, and he's got a steel chair. By God.
but we have another new baby Jace, as I'll call him.
Do you want to kind of go over, what he
Yeah,
does and everything?
yep. So he's double blue for a three loyalty planeswalker. He says he has a stack ability if you can't cast this spell during your first, second, or third turn of the game. And then he has a +1 draw card, then discard a card, a other +1 to exile a non-land card with mana value 3 or less from your hand. If you do, it becomes plotted. So plotted just means that you can cast it for free on a later turn. So next turn or later you can cast it. And then -6 until end of turn. End of the turn. Oh my gosh! Until end of turn. Whenever you cast a spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy.
Pretty sweet.
So I do think that there might be a place for Jace. Um, so if anyone who hasn't paid attention to spoilers or hasn't paid attention, his +1 does work with Valgi.
Yep.
So you can +1 put Valkyrie into the exile, go back next turn, cast him for his Planeswalker side for free. So like once again we found another way to break Valkyrie, God of Lies, in ways that Wizards did not think of.
Very true. Very true.
So at the very least there's that cute interaction, if nothing else with this. Um he has card selection, draw a card, discard a card. And then his -6 may be relevant. I could like there could be a world where like we see Jace get played in like a um Jeskai, possibly like a Jeskai or blue red deck, like just almost like a Jeskai burn deck playing like because I was thinking of putting him in like almost like Jeskai Monastery Mentor deck
Okay.
and try to work on with that, like being able to um +1 him to put your Monastery Mentor into exile, and being able to cast that for free with all your mana still up. So you have your protection spells, you have your removal spells, you have your draw spells. All things are just going to now trigger for. You get to trigger and just have fun with Monastery Mentor and make an army essentially. Um, so I feel like there could be something there. I could also see playing like an Esper build of this. So you have the white for Monastery Mentor, you have the black for the one card that escapes me is like Sedgemoor Witch.
Oh, yep. Sedgemoor Witch.
Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it's either a non-creature spell or instant sorcery spell. I don't remember for sure. But you make like 1/1 insects to go with it. That when they die, you gain a life. So you could do that, and then you also get to have your Thoughtseize and good removal spells to go with it. Blue for the draw spells to keep the card flow going, and then white for removal and protection or whatever else you're using the white for besides sideboard slots.
Yeah.
So I could see like something along those lines. Maybe it's not good enough. Maybe Jace is just not playable enough because you can't play him on your first 3 turns of the game. So it's something I think could be interesting. Again, I'm probably going to waste money or tickets and play points trying to see if this is playable just to realize that it's not. or maybe I'm gonna break the format and no one's gonna see it coming.
We have a pretty wide range here on
Well,
the Casual Spikes podcast.
well, everything's broken until you play it.
Yeah, it's like it's Schrodinger's magic card. I guess it'd be like Garfield's magic card is simultaneously busted and bad
And
all at the
trash,
same
yeah, and
time.
trash. It's simultaneously bulk and broke and like the most broken card you can play in Magic at the same time. But I'm
Here,
interested to see what happens.
hear me out on this, as I like cook for a minute here. What if like playing Jace? You know, you can't play on like your first few turns of the game. Like just getting to play it on turn 4, it could actually like help towards like protecting it in a way.
Yeah,
You
and I
know,
mean, it's definitely not a card you're jamming four of, right? It's not like it's, you know, to marry, to fairy hero, hero dominaria. It's not like something that's just like, I want to see this card. It's backbreaking when I play it.
yeah, I
But
think
I,
unless you build around like doing like kind of the Valky thing, you know, where like you just have a spell that has a very powerful backside that you want to
mhm.
cast, you're probably not jamming for Jace.
No, I think even if you're trying to do the Valky thing, you're not jamming for Jace.
I mean,
I
that's
think
probably a good point.
Jace is a three of max. Excuse me, three of max. Unless like I said, someone builds a deck or I make a deck and it's just like Jace is so much more powerful than we ever thought
Mm.
type deal. Which I don't think that we're gonna run into that. I don't think we have any cards like Oko or Earl where we're just like, why were we not playing four of these to begin with? Like this is just what you are doing type deal.
And you know, I think if Jace was printed like a few years ago, like when people were first doing like the, you know, select Valky, but I'm gonna play Tibble, Cosmic Imposter, or whatever, on like the
Yeah.
backside, I think this card would have been a lot better just from that merit alone. Because I
Yeah.
think Valky was very good then, but I think I kind of join potentially just the minority of people that like who knows if just playing like a Valky on like or a Teferi on like or not Teferi. What am I saying? A Tibble on like turn 5, if that's like good, like that puts you just so far ahead. I mean, it's good, but like, is it like,
Yeah, I don't think it's
yeah,
busted. It's not like it is good if you're controlling the board up to that point, right? So like
mm,
maybe if you're playing Jason a much more controlling shell, I can see that being really good, right? Because like if you're just like controlling the board, making sure like you're getting your one for ones, your two for ones, whatever you're doing, and just staying like marginally ahead. Like you just have to either stay marginally ahead or on, you know, um, or like at parity, and
yeah,
you're just like, all right, cool. Turn five, here's this ridiculous powerful planeswalker. I'm gonna get plus two cards. At, like it's gonna be a three for one essentially. Like best case is a three for one at least. Where I'm gonna plus it. I'm gonna get the top of your deck. I'm gonna get the top of my deck. It's both two playable spells, and you're gonna play a spell to remove this. So like I just now three. I got three for one advantage. Then yeah, like then you're pulling ahead, or like you're doing well or broken things, right?
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I mean, if like you're losing a board and your answer is turn five, Tibble, not as broken.
yeah, yeah. Um, and again, like, kind of gets better. Like the reason why I said like maybe playing Jace on turn 4, like you're just hitting your layer drops, like you're gonna have 2 mana open. You could reasonably protect him from like creatures and stuff for like 2 mana. I mean,
Hmm.
Tibble, you're gonna have like ideally like 4 mana in play, you know, at least 5 mana, you know, something like that. That like you could do the same thing where you could kind of like protect the king sort of thing. Um,
Yeah,
but and as I was like kind of looking at this, like if you're able to like plus Jace and you know like exile like some pretty good like 3 mana value like cards, you get to like -6. Like I believe when you just copy spells and like they end up being creature spells, like they just create tokens of those things. So there could be like a situation that comes up where I mean like even if you just do like the Tybalt thing, like you could make multiple copies. The Planeswalker and legendary creatures aren't that good because I believe they just die. Like they have to
yeah,
specify that they're get turned into non-legendary tokens.
yeah,
But
yeah. Those instantly die. It's the same thing like if you play two legendary lands, like this, it's an instant effect. There's no time to do anything in between. Like one will
yeah,
just immediately die, and you just pick and choose which one you're keeping in that
yeah.
case.
So I mean, like in that, you could like set this up ideally for you +1, you don't draw a discard, you just exile cards, and then you get to that turn where like you ultimate, you just get
Mhm.
like 3 spells off the rip plus all your mana and everything, to where you can just like make copies of these things. Like I think that could potentially end a game. Now,
Mhm.
if there's a combination of, even like 1 or 2 spells, where like if you got to like play it, copy it, and then play it, copy it, that it would just completely end the game is yet to be seen. But definitely some potential there to like kind of set up like these kind of storm type turns where you just play a bunch of spells and you get to copy them for value.
Yeah, exactly. I also think that you could see Jace get played in the Jeskai Ascendancy deck.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like a lot of problems with Jeskai Ascendancy is that you need to usually go off in one turn or two, and especially in like the sideboard games, like game one you can get away with this like I'm gonna jam my uh Jeskai Ascendancy into like either open mana or into like you might have removal spells, but like you don't have enchantment removal in your main deck.
Mm.
Like I'm just gonna jam this and I'm gonna pass the turn and the next turn I'll win because like you're not gonna be able to remove this. And game two, game three is when people have like that enchantment removal or things to interact with that type of ability. And with Jace, it still allows you to do that looting effect of drawing, discarding to cycle through your deck to get like sculpt your hand how you want it to be, and you're able to just go, oh, +1, I'm gonna put my Jeskai Ascendancy over here. Now it's not being thought seized, it can't be taken, and I'm gonna get to play this for free next turn, so I'll have 3 additional mana to go off on this combo.
Yeah. Uh, Jace definitely feels like a potentially powerful. I mean, we know like all the potentially like busted things you could do with really either +1, and then of
Mm-hmm.
course like copying spells has always been good, and I think only really recently has it been like copying like any spell you play rather than just like instant sorcery. So like all the potential is there. It's just like that potential drawback of like Sarah Avatar or something like that, or like
Yeah,
Sarah Avenger, where like you
Star
can't
Avenger,
you
Star
can't
Avenger.
play it on like the early turns of the game. I think ends up kind of working in Jace's benefit more than it necessarily hurts it. But obviously, having a 2 mana planeswalker that you can't play on turn two, is a lot worse than having to play it on like turn four
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the
But
day.
like I said, I'm interested. Like I'm interested to build around both him and Oko and see what happens and what you can do and what you can kind of break with it. Because I do think it's the plot ability is still very powerful
Yeah.
and like and if you're doing it the way you want to do it or you're doing it in like a certain manner, like your game plan is just to kind of like either one shot somebody or just make this an immeasurable board, right? To where like
Mm.
you're doing something where it's like, all right, cool. This is like my time walk, essentially. Like I got to save 3 mana to cast this spell, and like now I'm going off because I have 3 extra mana instead of like Monster Mentor is the one that pops into my head the most because one, I like that card. One, I think that card's powerful and very vastly underused. And like this is like I think a perfect way to do it, where you're just like playing Jace on turn four. You're playing kind of like this like middling control deck or like more mid-ranged deck where like you're just like, all right, well I'm gonna like keep the board at parity, keep it okay, and I'm gonna go Jace +1, put my monster mentor into the exile, and then next turn I'm gonna go off and like yeah you might have some creatures, but I'm gonna have like 16 creatures next turn, and you're not playing board wipes. How are you beating this?
I'm also going to be kind of interested to see how spree cards work with like the plot mechanic as well. Just because I'm assuming that you have to pay the additional costs, like the other spree costs. But
Yeah.
I could see just like even making some of those spells like 1 to 2 mana cheaper, like not having to pay the initial cost, but just paying all the other costs. Could
Mhm.
be like even then could just be fairly good.
Yeah.
But all right,
Excuse me.
Jace, it's been real, it's been fun, but it ain't been real fun
Not yet.
because we got a snake horse mount to look at. We got
Yeah.
Caustic Bronco. This one generic and a black for 2/2 snake horse mount, which is just awesome. That's a great creature type, snake horse.
It is.
Whenever Caustic Bronco attacks reveal the top card of your library, put it into your hand, you lose life equal to that card's mana value. If Caustic Bronco, or you lose life. English is so hard. You lose life equal to that card's mana value if Caustic Bronco isn't saddled. Otherwise, each opponent loses that much life, and it has Saddle 3, which Saddle 3, so Saddle is you can tap any number of other creatures you control with total power 3 or more. This mount becomes saddled until end of turn. Saddle only is a sorcery. And from what I've read from saddle cards, and this is just kind of like for future reference, creatures only get an additional benefit if you saddle them. And I guess in this case, like there is, I guess technically a drawback if you don't saddle it.
Yeah, but I mean, this is kind of a card that I have. Because I've argued that you could put Bob Dark Confident, for anyone who doesn't know why it's called Bob, into Pioneer. I've kind of argued this fact, while also arguing that black is way too powerful of a card or a color in Pioneer. I will not be taking questions. Um,
Let's make it
but I
better.
mean, yeah, black is too powerful. Can we put Bob into the format yet, guys? Come on, where's this? So, uh, but I think that the Bronco here is playable for sure. I think that if you're gonna, you're gonna build this low to the ground deck to play it in, like this isn't something where like you're gonna flip over 5-6 mana creatures and end up hurting yourself. I think Cossack Bronco is going to be way more of a I attacked with Cossack Bronco, I flipped over, this 2 mana creature, I'm gonna lose 2 life, and I'm gonna keep going. Like maybe you'll saddle it, in some instances, but I think it's definitely gonna be a Bob wannabe creature or a Dark Confident wannabe creature essentially.
I can see that. And it's so obviously like the best way to leverage this card is going to be like in the worst case scenario, like my cards are cheap. I'm not going to really take any damage. But then like the other part of it where it's like I kind of want to saddle this with like big creatures. So then like if I flip over like I mean you could play like something like Shieldred or whatever, but if I flip over a Shieldred or a what's the like not Gix's command. There's probably some good like 5 mana spells in the format. If it's like I
Yeah.
flip those, then it's like I just dome my opponent for 5 and like they still have to deal with and they have to deal with the spell that I just drew.
Mhm.
You
No,
know?
I agree. I think there's two versions of building this, and I think in my world I'm going, Cossack Bronco into NT into yeah, I took 2 damage, doesn't matter. I'm now seeing 6 cards this turn because I'm discarding an NT, I'm getting another card off of that, I'm drawing a card from Cossack Bronco. I'm going to bury you in card advantage and small beats, and you're gonna have to figure out how you're dealing with this.
Notably too, they're what is it for the Streets of New Competa, the 2/2, the underdog, ferocious underdog.
Oh yeah, is a 3/2 that
Yeah,
you can.
you can play that like on turn 3. You can saddle the Bronco and just something about a prize fighter like riding the back of a snake horse. Like I wonder if the snake horse is doing the damage or if he's also punching.
Well, the snake horse is grabbing them so they can't run away as he punches them.
He's like, you could have just got on the saddle. No time. Pick me up in your mouth. Swing me around and I'll hold out my fist.
Look, I'm gonna do this, and if you run into me, it's your problem.
I think I really do like Caustic Bronco, and I think like in the obviously not great if it dies, but I think you're right. There is kind of like these two separate builds, and you just have to decide like, are you in the camp of like I'm going to play this as more of like a Dark Confidant type card where if I flip my worst possible card, it's like I'm going to take 3 damage or 4 damage, whatever.
Mhm.
Or am I going to kind of play into that? And it's like, okay, I'm going to have some more expensive cards in my deck. I'm going to play kind of like a mid range slash like control deck, whatever, and use this as like a way to draw extra cards while also trying to get in damage and things like that. So it's interesting, where it's going to line up at. It gives it like a different dimension to kind of build on rather than just being a a pseudo Bob clone.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I'm interested to see what people come up with. I'm also thankful that this isn't somehow a vampire to go along with being a snake horse.
No, unfortunately, you have to have first cavern on vampire, second cavern on snake or horse. I guess I don't know.
But no, I am interested to see if this maybe hopefully breaks up some more interesting black based decks that aren't just built around like what we see now with the Rakdos vampires. I do like this card. I think it's very interesting. I think it's cool, and like we said, we've definitely identified that there's two different camps you're going to be in. Are you going to be in like I'm hoping to dome my opponent for 5, or am I, I'm just going to do card advantage, card advantage, card advantage, and greatness at any cost.
Mm. Oh yeah, Bronco,
But
I love you, buddy. You're a way cooler guest than Jace. He was kind of a douche. All right, next one.
yeah, we have
Probably my favorite like creature type, just because of like a video from like a while ago, which I'll reference here in a minute. We got Slick Shot Show Off.
yes,
It's
the
a
class.
oh yeah, go ahead.
I can see the classic bird wizard that we all know and love.
So
But go ahead.
there was like a skit or whatever. It's like Loading Ready Run did like a skit
Mhm.
or whatever where like they're playing Commander and they're like, oh well, I got this, I got that, and one of the other guys were like, I have what's the bird wizard from like the Commander decks? It's like
Oh, the like it's avian it's like a bird wizard advisor or something like that.
yeah, it's like Avon something, and
Yeah,
he's like, but I'm playing this, and they're like, what's so good about it? He's like, it's a bird wizard.
yeah.
It's a
It's just like
bird and it's a wizard.
wizard. How do you not understand?
Like that's why it's cool. So I mean, just kind of fun. It's a fun creature type.
It is.
Anyway, I'll let you read the card.
All right, but it is a generic and 1 red for a 1/2 with flying and haste, and then whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +2/+0 to end a turn, and also has plot for the same for its casting cost. Well, generic and red. So just a reminder, one plot is you pay the plot cost and exile this card from your hand. Cast it as a sorcery on a later turn without paying its mana costs. You can plot only as a sorcery. Really wants it to be notated that you can only do this at sorcery speed.
Don't want to be too busted now.
No. That being said, though, I do think this might bring back or help bring back essentially a mono red or like red white burn deck slash like prowess deck into Pioneer. Um, I do think that uh, aggro has been kind of pushed out of the format as a whole. Excuse me. I think that like mid range has kind of taken over the format. We see Black Red Vampires is like 26% of the meta right now. It is dominating in its, low to the ground mid range plan. I think this will help push, red back to being able to be doing powerful things. Like you can have this like, crazy turns where you just do a little bit of setup time and are, pushing immense damage. Because, essentially this has prowess with that getting +2 every time you cast a non-creature spell. It has flying and haste, which, the haste is obviously impressive, but the flying is probably more impressive. Where like the biggest problem you run into in like like the burn decks and stuff is like, yeah, you have like monster Swift Spear and like these little low to the ground creatures, but they're on the ground. So like if I go up the board, you have to waste your burn spells, clearing the way and getting the chip damage in. Show off kind of like gets around that, right? Like you're just like, all right, cool. I'm gonna cast this. I'm gonna plot this onto. Next turn, I'm going to cast this from exile. I have 3 mana, so I'm gonna be able just casting like three shocks. Plus, this is an incredible burst damage that like red hasn't had, right? Like they haven't had this. Just like I'm gonna play something that has evasion, haste, and hits hard.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely see that. I that's kind of what I was thinking too. Is like plotting this on like 2, and then on turn 3, especially like in the the Boros like heroic type decks as well. Like this is just a card that, not like probably not the best 2-drop when you pair it with a lot of the other like spells that are in the deck, but the fact that like it's getting an additional power on top of like another threat that you do not have to target, it just
Mhm.
gets like the residual benefit of just casting those spells, is like another way that that deck can just throw 20 damage on like on the board on like turn 3.
Yeah, because I mean, so Magical Christmas Land with like single playing Boros Heroic, like you are doing what 2, 4, 6. You're doing 7 damage plus whatever spell is you're casting. So like anything that's giving it any kind of pluses, you're putting just more damage on top of that. Like the deck is like this is going to be a powerful card. This will see play in Pioneer. There's no question this will not see play in at least probably 2 to 3 different Pioneer decks.
Oh yeah, I mean it's definitely anyone that's kind of looking for a I want to be able to like just play like a spell slinger type deck. Like if you want to have like there's a few cards in the set that pay you off for playing more than one spell and like a turn.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, just getting to kind of maybe kill a creature, maybe like cycle something like draw a card or whatever, 2 mana draw a card, and then attack your opponent for 5, and then have mana up to protect it, or just kind of continue to cast multiple spells where like it's gonna fly over and hit your opponent for 5, 7, 9 damage, every turn.
Exactly. We so I know we have is it Phoenix as a deck, but we could see like a blue red prowess deck come out because of this card.
Oh yeah.
There was already like a kind of like there's been a deck that's floated around for a while where it was like a blue red prowess deck and like blue red tokens deck, and like it's kind of floated around and it's always been tier 2, tier 3. And I've always said that deck was like, we're like just a couple cards from that deck being really good. And like this is another card to slot into that type of deck. It's another card to bring out. So I don't think like while this card might not end up being, well now we have 6 tier 1 decks, like because of it. I think it's going to increase the power level of a lot of these like tier 2, tier 3 decks and make them that much more consistent, that's more reliable to where you're not just like fizzling out. And even like in the, you know, um, Mardu, either Mardu Heroic or Boros Heroic, like this is a card I think you can just slide in. This is a card that I would almost consider cutting, like, cutting Monastery Swift Sphere for.
Okay. We're cooking. We're cooking.
So, I played Mardu Heroic not too long ago, um, and Swift Sphere is like the worst creature in that deck by far.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't get that much, it doesn't get that powerful. Like you come out on turn 1, like you can do some things with it. It's good against like the control decks and stuff, obviously, because like you get to go under a lot of things, right? But
Mm.
outside of like that, like it's not amazing against like most of the decks out there. It's not like the end all be all, right? Like Monster Swifter has been known as a good 1-drop creature, but like it has its limits.
Mm.
And like I would much rather have something like this, especially like with the plot ability of just being able to, plot this on turn 2, kind of hold off a little bit, and then like just unload on somebody, especially when I have evasion. So like I don't need to have that, trample ability to make, if I just have like 3 random pump spells that doesn't give me trample, I'm still just hitting for a ton.
Mm. Uh, I guess there's also like, I mean, this is probably like in the like bottom tiers of like Magic, or at least in Pioneer right now. But like Wizards, like just the like the blue red like aggro, like Wizard aggro
Yeah.
decks. I mean, the fact that this is like it is a Wizard, play it for free. I mean, this is another card that makes Wizard's Lightning a lightning bolt.
Yeah, like
I,
again, that actually does put like the mono red. I think there is a Boros like burn. Like we're getting real close to like Burrows burn being like a real deck into Pioneer. Like we got Lightning Helix just got printed in the last set. We got another wizard that we can play that is a good wizard
mm,
for Wizards Lightning. So like just giving us like, oh, we're gonna have Lightning Bolt more consistently now. Like there is just like this slow build of like we're building to a good like Boros Burn. It's going to be more creature based still, but is a Boros Burn deck that is slowly building to like where it's good.
I mean, having now like potentially 12 to 16 like cheap wizards that do something, between
Hmm.
like Vaishina Pyromancer, the show off, and then I think there's like a one drop wizard too, like another red
So
one drop one.
yeah, so there's the one mana. It's a 1 mana 1/2 wizard where if you have two or more instants in your graveyard, it gets +1 in haste.
Mm.
The what's that one called? Soulscar Mage is a wizard.
Soulscar Mage, and then so then like 16, so then like those two, and then Vaishina Pyromancer and Slick Shot, just all being wizards.
Hmm.
I mean, right there, I mean, you could essentially build mono red, splash white, and you just have some pretty powerful sideboard cards, maybe some potentially main deckable cards, and then obviously all these aggressive wizards.
Yeah, yeah.
That,
So we are
yeah.
slowly building to like a good cohesive deck, and it's nice to see.
Oh yeah. So actually, and this card ended up being a lot better than. I mean, it obviously reads pretty powerful, but I think it might actually synergize with a little bit more than I kind of gave it credit for.
Hmm. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of like I said, we're not gonna wake up, you know, the next day after the set's released and this card's a $50 card and destroying the format. But it
Yeah,
is
yeah,
slowly building up all these other decks and slowly adding layers to make them more consistent, more reliable, being able to do more powerful things.
yeah. I mean, you can definitely kill someone out of nowhere with like the help of this card. Like it is going to be doing a decent amount of heavy lifting.
Oh yeah, and I mean like this card just is powerful. It reads powerful, but it's one of those things that like until you get blown out on turn 3, turn 4 from this being plotted and this cast for free, you're not going to realize how powerful it is. And
Oh
I
yeah,
think it's going to happen a lot more than people think it will happen. Again, it's not going to be pushing any deck to tier 0. Nothing's going to be broken by any means. But I do think this is going to, surprise people and just go like, "Oh yeah, that's a card, right?" Um, yeah, I'm dead.
nice playing with you, sir,
Yeah,
or ma'am, or
yeah. There's,
non.
there's gonna be a there's gonna be a lot of people looking at their hand and going, "What's your life total?"
Bully
And
you,
you're like,
bully you, bully you.
yeah." It's like, "Oh, I thought safe was my the answer I thought."
All
I was
right.
at 12. They had no board state. What happened?
So all of a sudden, 3 spells later, 4 spells later, I'm dead.
Yeah.
All right, slick shot. See you later, Randy. This is the last card that you that I had you pick out,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I think I like this one quite a bit. So
Yeah, I say I really enjoy it. I think it adds some depth to a color combination that doesn't have enough depth.
I think that's fair. So potentially people just listening. So we're looking at pillage the bog, green and black sorcery. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is twice the number of lands you control. You put one of them into your hand, the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, and you can plot for a generic, a black, and a green. So this thing kind of reads like, in the early turns, it's in a way, it's a worse Grizzly Salvage in like a way. But kind of as the game goes later, you have less cards in your deck, you're presumably making land drops. This gets pretty close to like a demonic tutor.
Yeah. I mean, even in like you figure turn 2, turn 3 for casting this, you know, you're looking 4 to 6 cards deep.
Mm.
So if your opponent does something powerful or like your opponent goes turn 1, turn 2, something like, "Oh, I know what deck I'm playing against. This is what I need to be going for." Looking 4 to 6 cards deep for 2 mana and getting to pick one of those cards to put in your hand is pretty powerful. So I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
even just saying that like I think that's best case example. Like, so you're playing against, vampires on. You're playing against vampires. You're going into your turn 3. Playing this, looking at top 6 cards of your library, and looking for like that thought seize to make sure they can't go turn 3. Um,
Turn 3,
so
Soren,
yeah,
Divine
Soren.
Reaper.
Yeah, is huge. Like you got to look 6 cards deep for your thought seize like that because it's any card. It's not like you have to like so many times when you get to look super deep into your deck like this outside of like it being a blue spell. It's usually look 12 cards deep, but you can only take a land or a creature. And it's like no, just look 6 cards deep, 7 cards deep, however many lands like look this deep and then take anything you want. Granted, you only get to pick 1 card, so it is only 1 for 1. There's no card advantage here, but like that's huge in the like green black that doesn't have a lot of card selection.
Yeah. I mean, hey, people are willing to play like Karn and essentially like tax their powerful artifact spells by 4 mana to basically get what they want. So like what's the difference if you have to pay an extra 2 mana, albeit in restricting yourself on colors because you need to pay green black, but being able to, at like I said, at some point in the game, like this is just almost a demonic tutor. Like basically demonic tutor.
Yeah, the later in the game you go, like you're just gonna be able to look at so many cards and like this is a great and this is one of the things where like some of these cards like Grizzly Salvage can be like a terrible top deck late game. But like this, you're going like turn 6, turn 7, you're just like, oh, cool. Yeah, I'll look at, 12, 14 cards deep.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, glad I looked at the like top 5 cards are all lands. Glad I'm not drawing that now. Like
Mm.
there is something to be said to where like just like, oh yeah, I need Shieldred this turn, or oh I need a Thought Seize, a Fatal Push, a removal spell. Like being able to look that deep is ridiculous, and
Oh
like
yeah.
not something we've really seen.
Yeah. This is definitely a card that you can look at it and say that this scales up like as the game goes late. Like even if you're stuck on 2 lands, getting to dig 4 cards to find like your third land drop. I mean, you're pretty, with all the draw steps and everything, like you're pretty likely to find it. Obviously, turn 2, uh, Grizzly Salvage is a lot better because you just get to dig that extra card. But like past that, like this card, you're essentially arguing like, well, I can do one at instant speed, the other one I have to do is a sorcery. And honestly, once you get to look at so many cards with this card, like it being a sorcery just doesn't matter.
That and the fact that like you get to choose anything. I think that's the biggest draw here. Like I said, when you're on the like again, I was gonna go back to the vampires example. You're on the play against them on your turn 3, being able to dig 6 cards deep to find that thought seize to make sure you're not just gonna get 1-2 out of the game is ridiculously huge.
Mm.
Like that is not nothing to scoff at. Like that is a very real scenario that will come up playing. Like if you're playing this Pillage of the Bog deck, and like you don't need to be doing like you don't need to be mana ramping or doing anything crazy to make this card good. Like I can see playing this card on turn 2 and not being. I won't be upset. Like, oh, I looked 4 cards deep and found like that land drop I needed, or found a piece of interaction I know I'm going to need, or like, hey, I got 4 cards deeper into my deck of things I did not need.
Oh yeah, and like getting to plot this thing, and just because you plot something doesn't mean that like, okay, like your next turn you're able to play it. You don't even have to like play it. It's just like I have this for later. So like in those scenarios where you're like, well, I really need this. Well, guess what? It's turn 8. You have all of your mana open to you. I'm gonna look at 16 cards deep. Chances are I'm gonna be looking at least like, I mean, I'm gonna be looking at over a quarter of my library
Yeah,
to like go and find something to do with 6 mana in play, which in general there's a lot to be doing for 6 mana.
yeah. I think that this might help put Golgari, Black Green Rock, just make green playable again. Like make it to where like make Black Green a mid range deck again. Like I think this starts to put you into a reason to start playing green.
Oh yeah, this just offers a lot. Like mid to late game, this offers a ton of like value to
hmm
you.
And even early game, if you were just looking for like that, I need to find I need to find that removal spell. to be able to kill something next turn so I don't die, this this does it. Like I said, 2 mana to look at 4 cards is not terrible. Like
True.
I will take that exchange rate, especially in black green.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's not very many scenarios where like, I mean, like I said, turn two, it's like worse than Grizzly Salvage because chances are if you're playing this, on turn two, you're digging for a third land more than likely. But
Yeah,
past that, like it gets a lot better.
yeah. And like I said, just be the ability to pick anything. So like like we said, like if turn four, turn like you plotted this on turn three, or plotted this on like turn two because you had like a mana dork, and then turn five, you're just like, man, I really need like to slam something powerful here. You get to go look at 10 cards, like, oh, cool, I'll grab my 5 mana planeswalker now, be able to cast this on this turn. So I was able to look 10 cards deep for a threat that is hard to remove.
Amen. Yeah, Pillage the Bog definitely. I mean, again, like I thought this card was like really good, and even like getting to discuss and talk about it, it's another card that I think just that's a lot better. It ends up is like continuing to be like a really good card, like in my eyes.
Yeah, like I'd already like I was like, man, this seems like a good card. And I was like, I haven't seen anyone kind of talk about this. And then like just you and I talking about it now, and it's like this just gets way like the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, this is just great. Like why is I've not seen anybody talk about this on any spoilers or anything. Like I haven't seen people talk about this card, and I'm like, why is no one talking about this?
At least like giving it like a thought of like this is kind of a sick card.
Yeah,
uh, Maybe not like doing something super inherently busted, but again, if you're playing a game that goes 7, 8, 9 turns, and even you're at like 6 lands, even on like turn 9, that's still 12 cards to like
yeah.
look for something.
Look for something. Look for anything. Like you're at 6 lands on turn nine. Like that's still 2 mana for this, 4 mana for Shelly. Like
Yep.
that's like worst case scenario, right? Or 4 mana for insert whatever like you're looking for, like 4 mana for Archfiend of the Druids, or Archfiend of the Dross. Sorry, not Druids. 4 mana 6/6 flyer on turn nine. That you got to you paid 6 mana for it, but like you were able to dig for it and find it. Like
Mm. Oh yeah.
card seems good.
Oh yeah. Look at the. I swear. I don't know how this. I mean, this dog is like basically a horse, but like he is so loud. So I'm sorry for anyone blown out by this dog snoring. All right, so that was Randy's like 5 cards. Now that he thought were gonna be seeing play here and potentially Pioneer, and I
Yeah.
guess Modern, like seeing play outside of Standard,
Yeah, so
basically.
I will say my last three, the Cossack Bronco, Slick Shot Show Off, and Pillage of the Bog, I am way more believable that these will see um moderate to like you'll see them way more in Pioneer than you thought you were going to see them. I'm still on the fence on whether or not Oko or Jace is going to actually be good. Like I said, I'm going to waste a bunch of play points, a bunch of tickets on making them seem like they are amazing cards, and hopefully finding a new deck to play. But I do think that like Pillage of the Bog, Caustic Bronco, and Slick Shot Show Off will be seeing way more play than people are going to realize in the beginning.
Oh yeah, and it's kind of crazy to think that the 2 planeswalkers that are in the set, after we kind of went through everything, and you're willing to say that like these like the 3 spells are probably going to see a lot more play, or at least see play over the 2, planeswalkers that seem like they can do some pretty powerful things and kind of do some damage.
Yeah, it
Fire
is kind
design,
of
baby.
wild.
And you know what? Like a while ago, you wouldn't have said that. Like the planeswalkers were really good, and like the spells were good, but like the planeswalkers were just so much better. And now we've kind of seen that shift where planeswalkers really don't see a whole lot of play anywhere unless they're like inherently broken.
Yeah,
Which I don't know. We can argue if it's a good or a bad thing like later, but it's. I think overall it ends up being a positive thing.
I think it's a net positive as a whole.
All right, so that's Randy's five. A lot of like the cards that I would have put on like a list like this, we agreed on a lot of them. I thought like Oko, Jace are gonna be really powerful. Pillage the Bog was like another one that I was a pretty big fan of. The Bird Wizard, I didn't really have on there. And then what was the other one? While I look at it real quick, the
But
Caustic Bronco
I
was
don't know.
another one.
Yeah,
So while his cards are actually good, I think mine are pretty fun, and I think they offer, they're pretty, they're interesting to say
I'll
the
say that.
least.
I'll say at least two out of your five are definitely cards that I would have on a list somewhere of like playable or cards that I think we'll see play at least in Pioneer, if not maybe Modern.
Mm. And
So
I think I dug pretty, like, there's definitely like the first one. I think I dug pretty deep, and I'm a little bit lower on it now, but I still think it could potentially do something powerful, and it'll kind of use some context that I'll give. But before we get into those five and everything, because I didn't do it in the beginning, and now seems like the perfect time to do it. If you are still watching at this moment in time, if you're not already subscribed to either my channel here, Crawdaddy23, or Randy's channel, Modern with Randy, the link to his channel is in the description down below. You can follow it over there. Subscribe to him, support his content and everything. He's putting out videos now, and he's been doing pretty good. You should get be an early adopter, get a part of that.
yeah, I am trying to put out more videos. I'm trying to showcase some different decks in Pioneer. Despite the channel name being Modern with Randy, I have been playing a lot more Pioneer lately. Just because that's the RCQ season coming up. So obviously I got to kind of prepare for that and pretend that there's a deck better than Rakdos Vampires.
Hey, amen. I'm right there with you. So any of that, subscriptions, notification about all that stuff, that's a good way to support Randy's content, a good way to support my content. And of course as well, leaving comments, if you have any questions that you want us to answer, concerns, things that we could do, topics that we talk about, anything like that, feel free to comment down below as well. Just to get them on here, we can try to answer questions, in like in future episodes and things like that. And you know I know we would love to be able to do that sort of thing and have that kind of like following. So, please indulge in us and just, ask questions, anything like that.
Yes.
Oh God. Of course, like the worst possible time where I'm trying to chill out and my throat just gets super dry. People normally just like cringe when they do sort of things like that. My body literally just tries to choke itself. So,
Jeez.
this first one, I went deep. All right,
You did.
I got my proverbial bag, if you will. So, make your own luck. 3 generic, a green and a blue, sorcery. That says, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may exile a non-land card from among them. If you do, it becomes plotted. Put the rest in your hand. So, typically, with cards like this, where you look at the top card and then you do something with it, like in this case, you get to plot it, which means that you're going to be able to cast it on a future turn at sorcery speed without paying its mana cost. We had a card like Unexpected Results, which was like a card that people kind of liked playing. And there was like a red like suspend card and like Modern that you can, you play it and then you like shuffle all the permanents into your deck and then, reveal permanents until you reveal that many, put them to play. I can't remember what it's called. It's like Glimpse of Tomorrow, I think
Yeah,
is what
Glimpse
it
of
is.
Tomorrow. It's like, what is that card? Yeah, Glimpse of Tomorrow.
So with spells like that, I mean, people obviously have found ways to kind of build around them by playing some pretty big threats that they don't plan on casting, for the actual cost. They plan on cheating them to play. Make your own luck doesn't force you to shuffle your deck. You can, like, in a way, have ways to manipulate those top cards to where you can, like, okay, I'm going to draw 2 of these cards anyway. Maybe they're like counter spells or, ways to like kind of protect the thing that you're going to cast while having the thing that you want to cast on top of your deck. So for me at least, if you have like an Ulamog, again, we're living in Christmas land here, so we're casting, the unfair Eldrazi, we're casting, these big flashy spells. If you pay 5 mana, and presumably, you're playing on like turn 6, ideally, and you play like a 7 or an 8 cost spell, like you still technically saved mana and you still have all of your mana technically to play something on top of like playing the other cards that you drew as well. So you could, in theory, have like a 2 card combo where like you put these cards in your hand, you plot one of the other ones, and then you're able to cast the plotted one for free and then play your other part of your combo on that turn too. So like getting to this on turn 6, obviously there's a bunch of ways that we can draw out the game, inevitably delay things to get to a certain point. And once you kind of like resolve this, you can basically make it a I'm going to win the game next turn, by being able to do those things and then potentially leave up protection and or interaction for like your combo.
Yeah. I will say you could also try to do like the blue green like kind of rampy style deck where like you kind of have the blue for some draw, the green for all the ramp and the big creatures essentially, and kind of like use that as a way to like make your own luck a couple turns earlier. Go like turn one land or else, turn two land or else, turn three cast make your own luck, and turn four you're getting like Ulamog out.
Oh yeah, just yeah, and I think you could get lucky with this card, like as the name suggests, where like you with no manipulation at all, like your top 3 cards could just be, cards that you want to cheat into play.
Yeah.
And of course, like I am ill prepared, and there's like cards in modern for sure where you can like have brainstorm type effects where you like draw cards and you put them back on top of your library and whatever, but if you had some way where like you can know the top card of your deck or manipulate like that top card and like put things on there, like there's the black tutor where you can basically pay 3, put it on top. 8 mana gets expensive, but like that's just kind of like an example of something you could do in standard where you could just like put something huge on top of your deck, play this card, and then now you can plot the card you just tutored for and draw 2 cards rather than paying like the 6 mana for like the tutor to draw cards and stuff. So I mean, there's
Mhm.
there's ways that you can essentially make this like where you can literally make your own luck. Like you can just make this thing as powerful as you want it to be, or you can just kind of get lucky also in nature and do the thing you wanted to do anyway.
Yeah, I think that this is a fun card. I don't know if it's going to make any like broken decks or super powerful decks, but I think it could probably you can probably make a solid like tier two deck with this card. I think, or built around somewhat of this card, where like obviously you have other ways of doing things and such. So I don't think it's absolutely terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think that this is more on like the lower spectrum of like will maybe see play.
Yeah, pretty powerful. Pretty powerful effect. It's a fun card for sure. We're not going to be breaking the format with it, but I thought it was like a fun card to kind of include because it does kind of have like that, upside of just I'm going to play this card and I could potentially just win the game either by comboing or by playing something huge off of this and then getting just to leave up all my mana to protect it and whatnot.
Yes.
So yeah, definitely not. We're not breaking any formats, but we are sure gonna have a lot of fun playing this card.
Agreed. I think it is a fun card. I think it, like I said, I think it's a tier two deck, tier three deck. It is probably going to be something good at like an F and M, not to
What are
burst
those?
anyone. Well, you see, some LGSs actually cater still to not EDH. They're very few and far between, but and they play formats that are made to be best like one-on-one fighting, not group.
Oh, so I can't commit crimes in front of 3 people. I can only commit crimes in front of one person.
I mean, you can commit crimes for three people.
I
I
prefer to
think
do it with one other person.
gotta make it more intimate. I see.
Yeah, I gotta look them look them in the eyes as I, you know, in the Magic world commit a misdemeanor, but in real life it's like, I mean, what do you call like erasing someone's brain? I think that that has to be like a felony.
Yeah, can you prove it? I
It
think that's
might.
the, can you prove it?
You only have one witness and they don't remember what happened. How
Exactly.
reliable are they? All
All
right.
right.
Make
Moving
your
on
luck.
to. Oh, go ahead.
That was just like make your luck. Get out of here. Like fun card. This one I think
Yeah,
is a lot more fun, but I definitely think the other one has more explosive potential.
this one I think is actually playable. So this is the Gitrog Ravenous Ride. It is the 16th iteration of Gitrog,
The Hypnotoad.
if you will, but it is three generic, one black, one green for a legendary creature, Frog Horror Mount. We get Trample and Haste. It also has Saddle 1. So whenever Gitrog deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice a creature that saddled it this turn. If you do, draw X cards and then put X lands from your hand onto the battlefield tapped, where X is a sacrificed creature's power, and it is a 6/5.
Oh yeah.
So we got a wall of text here, along with trample and haste.
Yeah. So I really like this card. And a lot of the mounts and stuff that we've seen, they're creatures that are like pretty decent stat wise, on their own, and they
Hmm.
give you a benefit if you saddle them. And the Gitrog is probably one of the best mounts that plays just like a creature, and you have that added benefit of like, getting to throw away creatures that maybe aren't going to be able to necessarily get in the red zone to attack with your Gitrog monster, and then if it deals even just like 1 point of damage, you're going to be able to sacrifice that creature, draw 2-3 cards maybe,
Hmm.
and then put up to 3 lands into play. I mean, you can't tell
Yeah.
me that something like that like isn't powerful, where you can just like boost yourself so far ahead, like on mana and on cards compared to your opponent.
Oh yeah. So I am every time I see Gitrog get reprinted, and by reprinted I mean a new iteration of that card, I'm always like, is this the one that we can see that's going to see play? Is this playable? And I think this might be the best version we've seen for constructed playability,
Oh yeah, it's
because
yeah.
there's no drawbacks to this card and only upsides. Like every other Get Rock has had drawbacks, right? Where you had to sacrifice lands. I think both of them you've had to sacrifice lands to do anything with them or to make them not get sacrificed. This is at the worst case scenario, you are playing a 6/5 trampling haste creature that then has an upside.
Mm. Even if
That's pretty good.
Oh yeah, even like with mana dorks and stuff like that, like Llanowar elves, elvish mystics, things like that. They saddle it and you attack with like the Gitrog.
Mhm.
Still getting to like sacrifice that creature that was presumably doing nothing to like draw a card is like still fine, especially if like this is getting in damage and that too.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know, like this just seems like one of the better creatures that then gives you like that explosive burst, where you can like play bigger creatures that care about dying, and you have like a way to sacrifice them and then just get even more value on top of like what they already offer you just by playing
Mhm.
those other creatures.
Yeah. So I do think that Wizards is finally trying to push this green black archetype into Pioneer. Like we have this Gitrog is a great like payoff card. We had, Pillage, another green black card. I'm sure there's the other green black cards we're not talking about currently. Um, we've seen some of the other cards that you and I talked about, earlier for green that were good. Just like we are slowly seeing like kind of this resurgence of like green's a color. Do you guys remember that? Remember that green's a
Mm.
color? You can play it.
It
Like,
didn't it didn't seem like that long ago either, where like green, like Simic color combination was like the best like color combination to play, at least in standard, for a long time.
yeah, and then it spilled into like modern and pioneer because we had Oko the Broco, who was green blue. We had, similar things that would Uro, things like that,
Hmm.
where but it's kind of nice to see because like for the long, like I said, I mean, my problem with Pioneer is that like the green black rock deck or even like green blacks, with another color, has like there's just been no reason to play it because like green doesn't offer you anything. And I think now we're starting to finally get to where green's offering some things. We have some bigger creatures that have been printed, like some 3-drop creatures that are really good now. Um, and are seeing, going to see play. And then we have this Gitrog, which I think is the first playable Gitrog realistically in constructed playability. Where you're not going to it's not like a gimmick or something cute, like, oh, I just like it. It's like, no, this is powerful. Like I said, we have a card that at worst is 5 mana for a 6/5 trampling haste creature. And it's a frog mount. How can you be upset about that?
I know, he's just a cute little boy. He's just hungry. Look at those horses.
Look, look, don't talk to me until I've had my Snickers, okay?
In like semi off topic, and then I'll kind of shuffle over to the next card. But like I wish the Thalia and Gitrog monster like combo card from like March of the Machine.
God, I want that card to be playable so bad.
First strike death touch for 4 mana, a 4 mana 4/4, and then I think
Mhm.
when you attack, just like your opponent's creatures, and I think land like non basic lands come into play tapped, and then you can like sack creatures and or lands to like get card advantage. It's just like gross.
I believe when you attack, you have to sacrifice a land, but you can play an
Okay.
additional land each turn or
Yeah.
on your turn.
I don't know, it has so much text on it that like just should all be good in combination, but is not.
Card is trash, and I hate it. I have 3 of the good-looking copies of that card, and have wasted play points to make that card good.
And they just sit there. They sit.
They sit somewhere over that way, just mocking me.
Hey, they can saddle, so Gitrog and Thalia can saddle the Gitrog, and then you can sacrifice it to draw 4 cards after you already sack. So you could draw like 5 cards, put 4 lands into play. Deck suite. Gitrog tribal. Frog
Oh,
tribal, technically.
all right, let's
All
let's
right,
let's
all right.
move on.
All right, so I'm cooking. I'm 1 for 2 by design. So the next one, High Noon. And this one's boring compared to like the other two, but I think this is probably
Yeah.
gonna be this. I think this card, like maybe of all of them, is going to be the potential for like the better of like the 5 that I you know pointed out.
So I will say of our 10 cards, I think this is like the one that is guaranteed to see play.
Yeah. So any of you that have not played or seen the card Rule of Law, it essentially makes it so each player can only cast like one spell each turn,
It's true.
and it's like a 4, like I think double white and 2, so 4 mana total to get that
No,
effect.
it's I believe it's 2 and a white.
Is it 2 and a white?
Yeah.
No,
You
I
keep
thought it was
talking,
four.
I'll look it up.
You're probably right. So High Noon is one generic and a white for an enchantment that says each player can't cast more than one spell each turn, and you can pay 4 generic, a red, and sacrifice it to have it deal 5 damage to any target. So in decks that could leverage, casting one spell a turn, they're just looking to like 1 for 1 the opponent. They're gonna play a spell, I'm gonna counter it. They play a creature, I'm gonna kill it. I'm gonna like when I play a spell on my turn, I'm going to, it's going to impact the board. It's going to do something, and then I'm going to be able to interact with you in your one spell. Just the only downside in those things is that if you ever get behind with that spell, you have to then also build your deck in a way to kind of get rid of it, to then try to get ahead, and then potentially put it back into play to get back to the point where like 1 for 1ing your opponent is in your benefit. And with High Noon, the out is given to you on the card. You just have to find a way to play red in your deck to get rid of it. And, potentially makes it like kind of a win condition. It gives you like weirdly gives you like a removal spell and or reach all on one card that is going to help you, better 1 for 1 your opponent, and, in a way like lets you double spell by casting a spell on your turn, your opponent's turn, and just in general trying to keep them either at parity or behind you like every step of the way until it's no longer beneficial for you to only play one spell, and then you just have like an eject button built into the card.
Yeah, I do like that. Just real quick, rule of law is two generic and a white.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I enjoy the fact that like, so we were talking about this earlier, how if you draw multiple rule of laws, it's just a dead card in your hand because like pulling out another one doesn't do anything. And the same is in the sense true for High Noon. Like you having two out doesn't make it to where they can't cast less than one spell. But in saying that you're able to control the game forever, drawing four High Noons will kill your opponent, and theoretically by being able to deal 20 damage to them by sacrificing them. Like worst case scenario, right? Like this is like whatever, but like like you said, you have a built-in eject button to where like if you need to get to a point where you need to double spell or triple spell or do whatever, like you can just like end of my opponent's turn. I'm gonna sacrifice High Noon. I'm gonna take out your biggest creature. Go to my turn. I'm gonna cast three spells. Put myself back in the head of the board. You need to answer what I'm doing now. Go.
Oh yeah. And the thing is, like, it's so cheap. I mean, like, even just being like one mana cheaper than like Rule of Law,
Mm-hmm.
just makes this card, so much. It gives me like that kind of like the card Standstill. In a
Yeah.
way, it kind of gives me that kind of feeling, even though Standstill, you know, is better and is just not necessarily stopping you from doing anything, but it stops you from doing something. Like High Noon is literally stopping your opponent from doing something. We've seen in, Pioneer where, players kind of want to cast multiple spells, whether you're Is It Phoenix or you're like Lotus Field. This is just a way that like you kind of stop what they're doing. And even if they try to set up, by casting their impulses or casting their considers, what have you, they're only getting to do it like one turn cycle at a time,
Yeah.
where they can cast like a few spells, and then they have to also be able to get rid of it. And on top of that, cast all of those spells as well, which is not very easy for them to do in game one.
No. Um, like I do think that High Noon will be like it's gonna see play. It's gonna see play in um Pioneer for sure. It might see play in Modern and like some sideboards possibly. Not as certain on that one at all. But it definitely is gonna see play in Pioneer. Like this card is kind of just a house against Is It Phoenix? Notably too that it says you can't cast more than one spell in general. So like we have definitely Silence, which was good against Phoenix and Lotus Field as well, where it was you can't cast non-creature spells, more than one non-creature spell. The problem with that though is eventually Phoenix will hit enough mana to just casting Phoenixes and the other creatures, like they're going to start double spelling. This is just a guaranteed way for them not to double spell. And as it stands right now, Phoenix, I think, has two answers to this that they're playing. One being Otawara, the land, and then some are playing like a Brazen Borrower sometimes.
Yeah, it's an unfun card. Like it's not sexy. It's not the Gitrog monster. It's not like Pillage the Bog or anything like that. Like it's, what you see is what you get. But then when you kind of like add context of what is going on in the format and like what people are trying to do, High Noon does kind of feel like an appealing card where like you can play this card like in your main deck, and again you have like a way of getting out from underneath of it if you need to get out from underneath of it, or it just turns into a win condition where you like, dome your opponent with it, and then like you play another one, or you play like a second one, and then you can kind of like keep the lot going, and then you can sacrifice the other one to like hit your opponent. Like you can just kind of keep them underneath casting a spell a turn for the whole game and technically put a win condition on the board.
Mm-hmm. I do think that we are slowly building towards a almost prison taxes style deck being able to get played in Pioneer now too. This is another, again, like I think the set is just building so many more pieces onto like these existing decks that are out there or that could be built They're just missing, oh, I need like three more cards for this deck. I need four more cards for this deck. And we're slowly to see them getting built more and more. And like High Noon is like perfect example of like there is already kind of like a whitish, like white splashing another color prison style deck that has like popped up every now and then. And like this is just another card that slots into that deck, making it more playable, more better.
Oh yeah, I I I like this card a little bit more than I probably should, and you might be right. It might be the potentially like out of the gate the most playable, like most likely to see play in probably at least in modern. I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't. That,
I think it's even more playing Pioneer,
yeah.
but either way, I mean, the problem, like you said, is this is the broccoli of the format, right? Or of the set. Like,
Hmm.
it's not flashy, it's not amazing, but it's good for you. You're gonna want it in the long run.
Hmm. It's gonna be worth its worth its salt. Like
Hmm.
you know, like there's already good decks that like want to that actively don't like this card that really can't deal with it. Like I mean, there's like Besagio and Otawara and like the in Lotus Field, but realistically, like I kind of don't care necessarily. Like this card in general is just going to be good if they never have it.
Hmm.
But
It's just gonna be good in general. It slows down the game to where you want it to be. It's what the whole purpose of it is. Is if you're playing this card, it's because you have a game plan to play it proactively, not I'm just gonna like you're not slotting as in like, Rakdos Vampires is not splashing white to play this. It is
yeah,
not something they need. It is decks
yeah,
that like actively want it are playing this card. And it's good it's a good card overall. It's gonna see play. Like it's one of those cards where you're gonna crack a pack, you're gonna pull this as your rare, and you're not gonna be like, well, it's not worth a lot of money, it's not what I wanted, but it's not terrible that I own this card now.
yeah. I think that's a good place to put it.
It's going to be like your $2 to $3 rare. It could be way worse than that. It could end up being like $1 rare. I'm not sure where this will fall money wise. Obviously, we're not a financial stream or financial podcast, and based off my track record, I have not made a positive amount of money trying to figure out what's going to be the next broken card in the format.
Oh yeah, High Noon. I like this card.
Oh yeah, good
Um,
card.
next,
Yeah,
another white card. We had High Noon. It was High Noon. Now we have the final showdown. How
exactly.
fitting. It's like I planned it out this way, and it totally just didn't work out that way.
Yeah, I have
So
much better plan.
yeah, I don't think we had. I don't think we had another spree card on this list.
No, this is our first spree card. So, Final Showdown, it is one white instant, and then it has spree. So basically, you can choose one or more of these, and as long as you pay the additional cost. So for one white plus one generic, you can have all creatures lose all abilities until end of turn, and then you can do another generic. So you can choose one or all of these. So you can play, two generic and have all creatures lose all abilities, and then choose a creature you control that gains indestructible till end of turn, and then we have one white to initially cast it, and then plus three generic and two white to destroy all creatures. So this is instant speed. So this is. I'm not sure if this is the first instant speed board wipe we have actually had, like non-conditional board wipe,
Mm,
but it might be because the only other one I know of that sees play or has ever seen play was Settle the Wreckage, but it was still just attacking creatures.
yeah, it was conditional,
Yeah.
which I believe you said that. I just ADHD kicked in.
No, you're good. I did. I was like, I think this is the first non-conditional instant speed ward wipe we've had. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, don't worry. I got corrected that Nissa, the green blue Nissa was technically a 2 mana planeswalker that was printed into standard.
I mean, sure, she's a two-mana planeswalker that dies immediately when you cast her
Yeah,
for 2 mana.
triggers revolt for 2 mana. Great,
Cool.
but
As someone who's cast that card probably more than anyone, no, maybe not more than anyone else, but more than majority of Magic players, that is not a two-mana planeswalker.
yeah, it's technically 2 mana and that's it.
I mean, it's the same way as Banefire is technically a one-mana spell.
Yeah, true.
But
Yeah, you're just gonna be very sad.
oddly enough, every time I put it in on make a deck with it for Magic Online, they put it in not the 1 mana spot. Weird.
So this final showdown card, Randy, as the resident
So
blue-white control player.
yeah, so to my knowledge, I have not been paying super close attention because I think blue white has started to fall out of favor, in the form of Pioneer, which kind of makes me sad because I have like that entire deck basically already built. Um, People seem to be torn on whether or not it's good or bad or good enough to play. So I know already blue white players are starting to play Settle the Wreckage because that's their answer to the Vein Ripper, right? Vein Ripper is a problematic card, and like this isn't a good answer to Vein Ripper in the sense of like it's still 5, 6, 7 mana to answer Vein Ripper to not die to it because you have to make sure all creatures lose all abilities and then destroy all creatures. So you're paying 6 mana for that plus the initial cost of the card. So the creatures lose all abilities to end turn is semi-relevant. It will come up some amount of the time with the blue-white players and stuff, and like it does allow us to essentially kill Vein Ripper on turn 4 relatively easily. We still have to 2-for-1 ourselves to do it because we have to play Final Showdown and then play Get Lost or insert the other removal spell that we're playing. Um, but so you can. It does help with that conundrum. That being said, it doesn't really do much else, I don't think. Like, creatures losing all abilities isn't like nothing, right? Because like if you're playing against like the Boros Convoke deck, right? They go for like they're all in swing, and it's like cool, cool. When you go to combat, I'm gonna have all your creatures lose abilities. So like now those creatures you played this turn to give them haste, they no longer have haste. You may attack, for 3 damage. That's fine. And now I'm gonna board wipe. So it does have some play. It does. I could see it being well and doing well, but I'm not sure if this is going to just like automatically slot into blue white as like a 2 or 3 of.
Yeah, and I think what we had kind of talked about before, that a lot of these spree spells, like obviously if you play the spell and you play every single mode on it, it's obviously the very best that it could possibly be, and it's pretty insane. So real quick, for anyone that's like curious, and they probably could gather that this is how it works, but you resolve everything top down. So you can have everything lose all abilities and then give a creature you control indestructible, blow up the board, and your creature will still be around. It's not going to lose indestructible.
It doesn't lose anything it had before the indestructible. So
Yeah,
if it was a flying creature, it's now not flying.
but it's not going to get blown up by the final showdown, for what
Gotcha.
it's
That's
worth.
that's how I figured it would work. So, I mean, otherwise it doesn't make sense that I'm having creatures lose all his abilities and then also giving my creature indestructible at the
And
same time. Like that's not how that like. Hey, you're indestructible, but now you lose it.
it's like that
I,
SpongeBob
it is,
episode where Squidward went in and like ate all the Krabby Patties, and it's like, no, it'll go straight to your thighs, and then you'll blow up.
yeah.
But yeah, so these do work top down. So like a lot of the spree spells that you see, if you whatever the topmost cost you paid is going to be the thing that happens first, and then the next one down, if applicable, will end up being a part of it. So like you're essentially when whatever cost you pay, you're just reading those text box and then doing it top down in order. But a lot of like with these spree spells, I think the way that we can judge how good they are is essentially like how do they play when you only pick one mode. So like Final Showdown, essentially like 2 mana, all creatures will lose all abilities until end of turn. 2 mana being like a protection spell, and then 6 mana being an instant speed wrath. Some of those things are a lot better than the other ones. I think a lot of times, I think this is actually going to be pretty good as like a 3 mana, like all creatures are going to lose all abilities, but then like you give like your best creature indestructible and just eat your opponent's creature or whatever, and then just
Mhm.
like essentially blow them out. Like they're like, I have this big thing I'm going to be able to swing in with, and it's like, no, I'm going to make everything lose all abilities, and then I'm going to give this thing indestructible, and then I'm going to block and like essentially trade like my 1/1 for your 5/5 because I gave my 4/4 indestructible. You
Yeah.
know, like the potential of that happening, and being able to play defensively and what have you. So I feel like this card is just gonna be like pretty good. Like it's gonna be a pretty good card. Staple,
I
probably not, but definitely a good option.
So I have a hot take that I think this card is going to be good, but will not see play on blue white control. I think it's going to end up being in some other white deck where they care about um like the two lose creatures lose abilities and creature control gets indestructible, and that the it's just like an added bonus that, like, oh, this is a board wipe, some 0% of the time, but you're looking at, like, 1-2% of the time it's a board wipe from when things went wrong, and like I got outplayed, or my opponent drew 16 creatures to my 2, and now I'm just like, all right, cool, I'm gonna board wipe at the end of your turn, or like when you go to combat, and then now I'm gonna untap, I'll be able to play the first creature and move on, type deal. But I think Final Showdown is going to end up being a card you see in like some, like, white green, white black, some other deck that isn't blue white control.
Yeah, and you could potentially be right. I mean, I at least like maybe I kind of overvalue like the other two modes on this card, outside of like just the destroy all creatures part of it. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I like the card. It just reads. I mean, like all the spree spells, they all read so powerful when you get to pay the full cost, and it's like, at least in blue white, like you were saying, where you could just, they play Vein Ripper on like turn 3, you go to your turn 4, like you just make all creatures lose all abilities and then kill it, or even if you just pay like, you know, Showdown to have everything lose all abilities and then Supreme Verdict, and like they don't get all those Vein Ripper triggers, they don't get any death triggers and so on.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that just still feels like pretty good, even if it's not like, I don't know, it's not busted, but like it's still pretty good.
No, I think blue white will end up seeing either playing some of these somewhere in the 75. I don't know where they're going to play it overall, but I could see that happening very, very easily. I mean, the best case, like the way I look at this is it's a worse oh crap, I can't think of a worse dress down, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
like, dress down's better because it is a static ability for a turn. Like,
Yeah,
where, like, I play this at the beginning of your upkeep. Now everything for that entire turn, like whether you play a creature that comes into play this turn or whatnot, it loses all abilities. Where this is just in that instance. So, like, if I do this on your beginning of your upkeep, then you play a creature on your first main phase, it's going to still have all its abilities.
yeah, yeah. No,
But
exactly right.
I do think, again, I think this is another like broccoli type card where I think it is good. It's probably good for the format as a whole. It's going to add something to some other decks besides blue white, and like it's not a terrible card. It's not super flashy, but it is a good card.
Yeah, that's where I'm willing to like kind of put it. It's not
Yeah,
like it's not test your luck or anything, but it's pretty dang good.
yeah. I think that's like the hard part Magic players has as a whole, and I definitely struggle with this still, and won't say I don't. Where, like, you need to be able to evaluate cards for, like, it's very easy to showcase broken cards, and it's very easy to showcase like dud cards, right? Like, it's easy to, like, oh, the 6 mana sorcery that doesn't do anything is a dud card.
Yeah,
I had no idea, and it's really, oh, you know the 3 mana Oko, this card's broken. Really? No idea. Like, it's very easy to, like, do the highs and the lows, but like it's that middle ground of, like, what cards are actually good, and what is going to see play, and learning how to evaluate those cards. And it's a skill that I think most Magic players don't have. Is why you see, like, it's why you can see 3, 4, 5 months into the format, and people are finding these new broken cards, and it's like, yeah, man, that was no, like, you could have figured that out when this was spoiled. But it's hard to evaluate a card and say that this is going to be a great card, it's going to be a good card, it's going to be a mediocre card. And it's a skill that I think most Magic players don't have, and it's a skill you will develop your entire time of playing Magic. And there's people who never pick up that skill, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's it's the way your brain works, it's the way you process information. It's however it is. It doesn't matter. It's like, just because you can't notated like, oh, Final Showdown is going to be a good card. We could be wrong. It could end up seeing zero play, and we both just look like a fool here in 6 months.
That's true. And that's also a very likely thing to happen because I think I struggle with like evaluating card. I mean, I've been right from time to time, but
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah, we're human.
yeah, it's one of those things where like broken clock is right twice a day. Like you can, if you make enough predictions, eventually you're going to hit something. Like
Oh yeah. And you know what? Some people make predictions for a living and they get them wrong most of the time anyway. So
yeah, like
how
the
am I
weather
any
man.
different? Yeah, like the weatherman. That's literally you. Literally have one job. All right, you ready for this last one, Randy?
I don't know if I'm able to handle the surprise of it all.
Oh hey, look, smuggler's surprise. It's like he knew. For one, awesome the fact that we got to reference like a Trojan horse, in a Wild West themed set. But here we are.
It makes no sense that we have a frozen.
We could have
We
done this in Theros. We could have done it
we
in
did it
Theros
in
block.
Theros.
Oh yeah, with a crow and horse. Yep.
Yeah, we did it in Theros. They've already done this joke. And it made sense because we were in like the Roman time period, and now we're just like Wild Wild West. What should we do? Trojan horse.
Big horse. But this one is not a big horse. It, regardless of what you're seeing on your screen right now. So this is another spree spell,
Yes.
and so for a green, you then can pay any one of these costs, either by themselves or all together. So for 2 generic, you can mill 4 cards and you put up to 2 creatures and/or land cards from among the mill cards in your hand. For 4 generic and a green, you may put up to 2 creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. And for an additional generic, creatures you control with power 4 or greater gain hexproof and indestructible till end of turn. So as an instant, in theory, for 6 mana, you could essentially get like a tooth and nail, like one part of a tooth and nail, which is technically 1 mana cheaper than what tooth and nail does. And I think tooth and nail is an instant. I think it is.
Wait here a second.
Um,
I don't know. It hasn't been played in forever.
yeah,
I
but
don't play Commander, so that's not a real card to me.
in a way, like this card for 5, hold on, 6, 7, 8. So essentially, like double green in like 6, you can mill 4 cards, potentially pick up a creature that you're kind of looking for, then put it into play, and then giving those creatures hexproof and indestructible to like protect them. So your opponent, can't necessarily do anything. Like this is also a way that you could play like World Spine Worm plus like Xenagos. Like a way, like if you just have them in your hand, you can just 6 mana like win the game, and protect for 7 mana, like protect them as well.
So Tooth and Nail is sorcery, by the way. Yeah,
It is
seven
sorcery.
mana and 7 mana to put 2 cards or 2 creature cards from your hand into play.
Yeah, and then like you can pay 9 to like search for. I mean, obviously Tooth and Nail is like better because you could potentially search, but with this at least, you get the cards in your hand plus like a few hits as well. From the cards that you mill to potentially just put some big fatties into play and obviously not have the drawback of having to bounce them, having to, sacrifice them at a turn. You get a card that has built in, cheat these things into play and give them protection as well.
Mm-hmm.
Is it playable? Probably not. But again, this is like another fun card where like, you know, probably even as like an okay play, you end up putting, 10, 8 to 10 converted mana cost worth of like stuff into play. And, you do it for 6 mana, you're still, at instant speed, you're still kind of like cheating on the mana to like play those things.
Yeah. So I will say, if you go back to what we were talking about, where is each one of these individually good? I would argue no. So I think that the problem with Smuggler's Surprise is like the first one, the mill four. Like, if you want that kind of ability, you want Grizzly Salvage. It's just better. It's 1 mana cheaper. Yes, it's 2 colored mana. It's a black and a green, but we get to mill 5, and we only get like a land or a creature, but like you get to look one deeper, one cheaper. I think that's better. There's nothing I think comparable to the 5 cost of it, the putting 2 creatures into play from your hand. I don't think anything compares to that as a whole. And then the creatures you control power 4 or greater gain hexproof and indestructible. I don't know what deck wants that right now currently.
Uh, yeah, I don't think there's anything that like. I think your second and third copy of Smuggler's Surprise would more than likely just protect the things that you put into play from the first one. Would be kind of my guess.
So I will say, unironically, that Smuggler Surprise and Make Your Own Luck would probably go into the same deck.
Yeah, probably. You could probably
So
do that.
when you draw your Ulamog, you can then play it for 6 mana.
True. Unfortunately, like the Eldrazi are going to be kind of like the worst ones to like put into play, like, except for like Ulamog. But they're probably not going to be the best things to put into play. But like, there's some pretty powerful. Like, you could play like the green.
Titan of Industry.
No, no. Well, yeah, Titan of Industry is a good one. There's like Havlar Huntmaster or something like that, where like you put it into play and whenever it comes into play or attacks, it makes wolves. Like it makes two two
Oh,
twos.
gotcha.
So like
Okay.
you could in theory, I mean of course like you just insert like two best creatures in the format available to you and like this card's going to be pretty good, but like there is kind of a decent amount of like high costed creatures that like with like the right support like you could just play them, on like turn 4,
Mhm.
turn 5 or whatever, but then like this is a way where you could just like put them into play on like your opponent's end step and again either like potentially just win the game off of doing that, like World Spine Worm and like Xenagos, or just getting value off of it like Huntmaster, and then some way of like buffing your creatures like Enrace Forerunners, like on like just your turn,
Yeah.
because I mean that's whatever, like a 10 or like an 11 cost or like a 9 cost card, putting that into
Yeah.
play plus something else for 6 mana and then just like overrunning your opponent, still pretty good. The potential's there. Is it going to be like its own deck? It could be. Is it going to be broken or tier 1? Probably
Probably
not,
not. No.
but it's a fun
But like,
card.
yeah, it's a fun card. Like I said, I think that the same deck that wants like Make Your Own Luck would probably want Smuggler Surprise as well. Where like because eventually you're gonna draw some of your big costed creatures. Like it's just unless you have God tier luck, which if you have that kind of luck, you should go play poker, play something else that you're gonna make like real money at.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yep.
unless you have like that God tier luck where you just never draw your big creatures where you don't want to, you know, you're gonna end up getting stuck with them in your hand. So I could see like a fun, like I said, tier 2, tier 3 deck kind of playing Smuggler Surprise and make your own luck type thing. But it's a fun card. It's fun to play around with. Like these are the cards I like to play around with. These are the cards I like to see. Where like it's like the Timmy in you that like, oh, what can we do with this? It's like fun and interactive and like funny to do type thing. Like like we said, like this card's not going to be putting up numbers in the top eights. Like you're not going to see a five the next Pioneer like top 64 or whatever. It's like, oh man, fucking 82 copies of Smuggler Surprise. Who knew?
Oh yeah, we're
Like that's
not.
not gonna. Yeah.
But it's fun. I mean, we can literally list off like 2 pages worth of like creatures that are gonna do like irreparable damage to your opponent just by like them tapping out to do something, and you're like, okay, here is like, again, like even Ulamog and like something else, like you've at minimum put 11 mana and of worth of things into play for 6.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Like
good.
literally. Yeah. It's like I think it's fun. I think it's a cool card to maybe build around. I think it's a cool card to try to like do some things with. But I think, like I said, I think the biggest problem with this card is that the other two abilities are not anything special or like something you're happy about doing.
And like the top ability like only gets better by the middle ability. Like I think like 3 mana to like do that is like fine, sure, whatever. It's okay, not
Yeah.
ideal, but okay. And then getting to like 8 mana, like just look at 4 cards deeper. Plus what's in your hand too is like kind of where I think this card could. I mean, you could potentially just like do some pretty nasty things with it. It the explosiveness is there, but you're probably right. This really won't see any like serious competitive play, but once it gets you, boy, it's gonna get you.
Yeah. So I will say that if they would have they if they made this card just slightly better, and by that I mean if they would have changed the +2 to where it was mill 4 cards, then you put up to 2 creatures and or land cards from your graveyard to your hand, would have been infinitely more playable and better. I don't think it would have been too broken or too good, but I think that would have then made it playable.
Yeah, it definitely would have made it better if you had like the graveyard, but then again, that probably would have made it. I mean, it definitely would have made it better. Maybe not too good, but
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to figure out is that would have if that would have made it broken in that sense. And I obviously, without playtesting a ridiculous amount of time of like playing that card that way, I have no idea. And so I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like, oh, it would have been broken. But like it easily could have been like, oh, well now, this deck is viable in modern and this deck is now destroying Pioneer and like, oh, Randy was wrong. This is broken now. But without, hindsight and 2020, all that BS. I do think that if they would have changed it to that though, this I would be much higher on this card and much like more could see more play or see play, I guess.
you'd be more willing to agree with me. And now it is my mission to assemble the most broken creatures that I can find in the Pioneer format and figure out how to ramp into this thing on like turn 4.
All right, good luck.
That's why I believe if we can figure out how the spree spells work, in conjunction with like something like Jace or whatnot, like when you can plot cards, I'm assuming you still have to pay the additional cost.
That is my
But
guess. Is you're either gonna have to pay the additional cost, or it's gonna actually just do nothing because you can't cast it for free and pay additional costs.
yeah, so I mean we'll kind of. I mean, yeah, they probably don't do anything, and by design, they're probably meant to do that because how busted would this be? Like, you just get to like, I mean, you turn 5 this with Jace and just get to have all the modes
Yeah,
in after at least getting to dig a card deeper too. That'd be nuts. Good thing I don't
but
design Magic cards.
yeah, that's why you don't.
I
but
every if I was the head designer of Magic, everyone would be in Christmas land. You can call me Santa Claus. That's gonna be my name on like all the sets. Like when they credit the directors, it's just gonna be Santa Claus. Everyone's getting gifts.
Jesus. But that was 10 cards that both me and Dakota had found interesting or a little bit different. Obviously, like we have some of the more, uh, maybe not obvious broken ones, but more like people are going to be drawn to quicker, faster, things like that. And then some of the more just like middle of the road cards, um, things like High Noon and Caustic Bronco, I think are cards that people are going to point out immediately, like, oh, this is playable, this is good. As to where like things like Pillage of the Bog and like the Get Rod monster and things are like less obvious that they're good cards, and I think will be playable and see play outside of just standard.
Oh yeah, this overall, I'm still I'm in love with this set. I like everything that it's doing. I like all the mechanics that it's introduced. Some of the ones that it's kind of brought back, and I'm interested to see kind of like the impact that it has on standard and what it does to like the other formats. And already kind of interested in a potential return to whatever plane this is set on.
Yeah, I think the only mechanic I don't really care for or don't think is like that interesting is the saddle mechanic. I think it is what it is.
Yeah.
It's not, but I think like they've done some things right with it with like I think like the Get Rug monster and like the Cossack Bronco, Caustic Bronco. are two of like the better ones they've done something with. Trying to like make when it's not broken, it's not crazy, but it's going to make an impact and it's going to do some stuff with it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, they kind of like I'm not gonna say fix the issue with vehicles because like vehicles are obviously still like pretty powerful cards like in their own right, but it's like with like vehicles and stuff like they're not creatures and you have to have creatures drive them whatever and saddle it's like you still have like the creature it can still kind of do its thing, but then saddle is like okay well for potentially giving up an attack with like another creature you can saddle it to another creature. It's not going to get any additional benefits for saddling, but when it does something, it'll care if it's saddled, and
Yeah,
it'll allow you
it's
to do more.
yeah. I think it's a good mixture. Like I said, I don't think Saddle's broken or crazy or whatever at all by any means. But I think it is a good little mixture of what they want from it. And I think some of the saddle costs are too high for some of the creatures we see. Um, just like the effect on, but we'll see how good they all come out and how it all settles once the set's out and people are actually playing with it.
It's kicker.
It's always kicker.
It's all kicker.
Uh,
Um, but yeah, I think that's gonna wrap up our episode. This is actually gonna be a pretty long episode, Randy. What did we do? What have we
well, we
done?
went over a bunch of cards and thought that we would like do a couple minutes, and then we took like 20 minutes for each card. So
Hey, you know what? That's what people, they come for the content, they stay for the personalities. Am I right?
I hope so.
I, that's the point. That's the point. We're trying, all right? We're doing our best. But all right, yeah, that's episode 7. Look at that. I forgot like within an hour and a half of starting, I already forgot like what episode this is. Like
Oh, I know.
episode 7 of the Casual Spikes podcast and we'll hopefully see you all next week. The set's not going to be released, but I believe it's going to be like fully spoiled
It
by the
should
end
be.
of next week.
Yeah,
So we'll have some of course probably go back to more of like the modern pioneer stuff, kind of looking over the meta, some of the new decks, and hopefully we'll kind of get some more information about what is going on in the Magic world. Figure out necessarily when regional championships come up, and we can do some preview type stuff for it. So that'll be fun. That'll be interesting.
oh yeah. Looking forward to playing some Pioneer and remembering why I hate the format.
But you got to play some standard for mana traders. Have to do it.
I'll try.
Yeah, don't try. Do. You're a seasoned veteran of the format. You know what's good. 68
Yeah,
card Slogurk special.
that's why I didn't qualify for Dallas. You know what's good.
I didn't qualify for Dallas either.
Although I will say, I think majority of my problem why I didn't qualify for Dallas is because I didn't really want to put that much money into standard and buy Shieldridge and the Gix and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, that's fair though. That's totally
Yeah.
fair. Well, all right, everyone. That's gonna do it for this episode. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, again, please consider subscribing to not only my channel but Randy's channel as well. Posting some Pioneer content on there currently. And sounds like looking to post multiple videos a week. So like that's just more entertainment from your two favorite podcast hosts. Something to think about.
Exactly.
So we would appreciate that. And again, if you stuck around to this part, any comments, questions, concerns, things you want us to discuss, anything like that, if they're good, go ahead, throw them in the comments. We'd be happy to kind of answer questions, take thoughts, opinions, so on, how we can either make the show better or, again, have just something that we can kind of do to interact with the people that end up interacting with our product here. My God, he is a loud boy. So, yeah, that's going to do it for me. I'm Dakota. That's Randy. And we'll see you all for episode 8. And I will forget that it's episode 8 until about 20 minutes before we actually record the episode.
Exactly.
So, yeah, we'll see you all later.